All right, here's day 12 of the 30-day Bible reading plan. It's kind of a long chapter, and warning up front, it's a pretty graphic chapter. So if you have kids in the room, you may not want to watch this just yet. 1 Samuel 15, this is Saul's failure as king, and it's a pattern that we see all through Israel's history. The kings never quite live up to what they're supposed to be. And so they're always pointing us ahead to the real king, to King Jesus. 1 Samuel 15, and Samuel said to Saul, who is the king currently, the Lord, or is becoming king, I should say, the Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people Israel. Now therefore listen or obey to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction. This is a word that gives people a lot of grief in the Old Testament because it is a pretty harsh term. It literally means to destroy everything. All that they have. Do not spare them, but kill man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Now, this is, you can find a lot of literature on this. You can find a lot of discussion about why this would be and how God could say these sorts of things. The only thing I'll say on this point, without giving some sort of robust defense of exactly what's going on here, would be to say that you've got a pagan nation that you're talking about, a nation rife with things that dishonor and displease God, and this is the Lord's judgment. Now, you can go in, and like I said, you can find some good resources. Paul Copan comes to mind, a philosopher who's written on some of these difficult passages in the Old Testament. I think his book's called Is God a Moral Monster? That would be a good place to start. So Paul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 men on foot and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. Then Saul said to the Kenites, go down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the people of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites, and Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt. And he took Agag, the king, so we'll remember him, of the Amalekites, alive. So this is a problem. And devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and the oxen and the fattened calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. In other words, they would not devote them to the ban or to destruction here. All that was despised and worthless, they devoted to destruction, but they didn't these things. So that's a problem. They haven't done what they're supposed to do. They kept the good things. They kept the king, but they didn't follow through on the word of the Lord. Right? And this is Saul's fault as king. So the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret, and we could talk a lot about this too. The classic understanding of God is that he is passionless, which means he doesn't have emotions like you and me. He's not responding in time and space. But the Bible often gives him these sorts of emotions. So Calvin referred to this as, I'm not sure I can spell this right, accommodation. I know that's incorrect, but we're gonna go with it. So this is the sort of thing that's happening here. This is God speaking in our language. Actually, Calvin called it baby talk as well. The problem with this is, and we could have a long discussion, those who would say God doesn't know the future, jump on passages like this, and this is going to be repeated 3 times in this chapter. They jump on these passages and they say, look, you see, God doesn't know the future, and he's sort of responding to events like a human, and he regrets things he did and says, I should have done it differently. That's not the biblical picture of God. He knows the end from the beginning. So what we have here is just this language of God within time and looking at the events, saying, this didn't turn out well. This isn't God saying that, well, I didn't foresee this happening, right? This is just sort of his expression that this has not gone well for Israel because he cares for his people. So I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. So the whole issue here is he's been disobedient. And Samuel was angry, and he cried to the Lord all night. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told Samuel, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, that he set up a monument for himself, and turned and passed on and went down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed be you to the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. Now this isn't true. And Samuel said, What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of oxen that I hear? Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God. So this is blame shifting. This is a lot like Genesis 3 when Adam says, the woman you gave me forced me to eat of it. Saul's not even taking responsibility as king here. And he's also lying about what exactly has happened. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stop, I will tell you what the Lord said to me this night. And he said to him, Speak. And Samuel said, Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. So in other words, it's your job to do the job of the king, right? Your job to follow the word of the Lord. And the Lord sent you on a mission. So you here. And go and devote destruction to destruction, the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. When then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Or why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? So look, he's pouncing on the spoil. He wants it for himself. And Saul said to Samuel, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction, but the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. And Samuel says, Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than fat of rams. So here's what the Lord wants. He wants a heart that loves him, not one that just goes through rote ritual, right? For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. So what we see here, Saul doesn't live up to the expectations. He's an imperfect king. Now he does repent here. Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Now therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me, that I may bow before the Lord. And Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Now I say he has repented, but perhaps he's only feeling guilty and just doesn't want to deal with the consequences. As Samuel turned to go away, Saul seized the skirt of his robe, and it tore, and Samuel said to him, it's really powerful mic drop moment, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you this day and has given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you. That's going to be David. And also, the glory of Israel will not lie or have regret, for he is not a man that he should have regret. Now, this is really interesting here. Because, one, this is a reference to God, but this word here is the same word that we saw at the beginning of the chapter when the Lord regretted making Saul king. And made this sort of argument that, well, we have to understand that differently than the way we might want to take it. And that's true here, right? This explains. So what the author of this book is doing is this sort of wordplay to say, well, on one level, the Lord is looking at what's happened and he's saying, I wish things would have been different, but he knew all along, and he's not somehow thrown off. His plan is going to continue. That's what this means. He's going to continue his plan. Then he said, I have sinned, yet honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me that I may bow before the Lord your God. See, he really doesn't want to accept the consequences. So Samuel turned back after Saul, and Saul bowed before the Lord, which is good. Good step, Saul. But doesn't quite make up for what's happened here. Then Samuel said, bring here to me Agag. Remember, that's the king. And Agag came to him. I'm not sure why this is translated cheerfully. I've done just a brief research into it before I shot this video. Probably better. The Hebrew is more like in chains, it appears. And a lot of times we follow the Greek translation when there's some sort of dispute. And that one says trembling. He came trembling or fearfully. So really not sure what's going on here. That might be an interesting study for me to do later. But that's all I can really say about that right now. Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless. Remember, Agag's an evil man, so this is going to seem heartless, but he is a really ruthless guy. As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. I told you there is a censorship warning on this. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul, and Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, but Samuel grieved over Saul. And the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. So this pattern is going to continue. Even David, who's going to be a man after God's own heart, is going to fail, and we need to see a better king, one who is perfect and righteous and just, and who completely obeys the word of the Lord. That'll come by the time we get to the New Testament, but we've got a little ways to go until then. I hope you join me tomorrow as we continue our march through Genesis to Revelation, this 30-day overview of the Bible's story.